It's really nice that Swamiji, is uh, giving us some uh, details about how to incorporate spiritual practices in your daily lives. I just sent Swamiji's bio to everyone about what his overall expertise and so on. He's a medical doctor, and he has been helping COVID patients currently. And related to yoga, he's born in a family that was very much interested in yoga and all spiritual practices. And he spent more than 20 years at Bihar School of Yoga, and under the its guru is Satyananda Saraswati. And you are consider, I consider ourselves as a yoga Shri Yoga family to be fortunate, and it's a blessing to have Swamiji give us a talk on this topic. And it's one thing I want to mention is Rajendra Pradhan, who is also there. He's the one that because of him we got introduction to Swamiji. And so thank you, Rajendra.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji. And I also wanted to mention Harish, who is Rajendra's friend, but I think looks like it's
classmates. Yes.
Yeah, his classmate. But I think looks like he's not here right now. So with all that introductions, again, you can look at his bio that I sent recently. And so you will get more information about Swamiji. And of course, you are going to see him more often. He will be involved with various activities, maybe some meditations, some other things. So with all that, Swamiji, thank you very much. And Swami Yogaprata is a disciple of Swami Satyananda Saraswati, who founded Bihar School of Yoga and also Rikhiya Peeth.
Great, wonderful. Please sit in any comfortable posture with your hands on your knees in Dhyan or Chin Mudra. The head, neck, shoulders, back, all in a straight line. Eyes and mouth gently closed. Become aware of the whole body from the top of your head to your toes. And observe if there is any tension, tightness, or discomfort anywhere in the body. If so, move that body part slightly so that the tension dissipates and you can come into a state of relaxation. Bring your awareness to your breath. I am breathing in, I know. I am breathing out, I know. Mindful awareness of your breath. Try to experience each and every aspect of your breath, right from the cool air touching the nostrils, going up the nose, down the throat, down the chest, expansion of your abdomen, expansion of your chest, a short pause, contraction of your chest, contraction of your abdomen, air rushing up the chest, up the throat, down the nose, out from the nostrils, warm air coming out this time. For a few moments, try to become aware of the entire process of breathing. Now shift your awareness to the eyebrow center, Bhru Madhya. And at the eyebrow center, the Bhru Madhya, the place where we apply the kumkum, the tilak, at that place, try to visualize a bright candle flame. If it is difficult to visualize, you can also try and become aware of a subtle pulsation, a spandan at the eyebrow center. And maintaining awareness of this experience at the eyebrow center, we shall chant the mantra Om 3 times altogether, taking in a deep breath. Let us chant the Shanti mantras Om Sahana Vavatu together. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Harihi Om. Namo Narayan. Bring your palms together, rub them against each other, generate some warmth in the palms, then place them on the closed eyes. Feel the warmth radiating from the palms to the eyes. And when the warmth reduces, then gently move the palms away. Open your eyes. Namo Narayan. It has been a very wonderful moment to be able to connect with so many like-minded yoga aspirants. And before we go ahead into our discussion of living yoga and a discussion about spiritual progress, I would like to invoke the Guru Tattva with a few verses. Guru is not a person, but he is or she is a tattva, an element which manifests through a person. And Guru is the dispeller of darkness, of ignorance, of avidya, of maya. And without the grace of Guru, nothing is possible. So I will invoke the Guru Tattva with a few mantras, and you can join me with the mantras, after which we shall begin our discussion. Gently closing your eyes. Akhanda mandalakaram vyaptam yena characharam tatpadam darshitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Dhyanamulam Gurormurti Pujamulam Gurorpadam Mantramulam Gurorvakyam Mokshamulam Gurorkrupa Mokshamulam Gurorkrupa Mokshamulam Gurorkrupa. I pray to the Gurus in the past, the Gurus, the Masters at present, and the Gurus who are yet to come, and humbly request that they grace us, they bless us with the knowledge, with the wisdom, and also with the strength to walk the path. For no path is useful without our effort to walk the path. Namo Narayan, Hari Om, Sat. Gently open your eyes. At the outset, I would really like to thank Rajendra and Sabnis ji for introducing me to so many like-minded people. And it is really a great pleasure and joy to be amidst people who have been practicing yogic way for a long time. And I believe today, when the world is undergoing a lot of transition, we, the yoga practitioners, yoga aspirants, yoga sadhaks, have a duty to the world. Yoga is not just a means by which we can get our body fit together. Yoga is not just a means by which we can improve our intellectual quality, but yoga is that tool which has been presented to mankind when we are in a crisis and we want to come out of this crisis. Because opportunity comes to everybody, but opportunity doesn't come openly, it comes in disguise. How can we know? How can we recognize that? That is taught to us by yoga. And this knowledge has been going and has been coming all along from time immemorial. Since the beginning of creation, every living creature has had one desire: to have happiness, to have pleasure, and to remain away from sorrow and pain. Be it a small insect, be it a bird, be it a mammal, or be it human beings. All of us have this one thing in common. And in fact, all our efforts have always been in this direction. Do we succeed? To varying degrees, perhaps we do succeed. When we were young, we wanted that toy without which I could not be happy. And when we grew older, the toy did not matter. I wanted a bigger game. As I grew older, That game was also not sufficient. I wanted a new video game. In today's times, it might be a mobile or an iPad or whatever. As we grew older, we wanted a car, and so on and so forth. Then we always want something and we feel that, aha, if I have that, I will be happy. But does it happen? Yes, we do feel happy, but that happiness goes away. And that happiness is replaced by a fear of loss of that object which might give us pain. And sure enough, that object sometime goes away and then we have difficulties. And this goes on the whole time. In fact, we feel that if we have a nice cup of tea or a glass of beer or God knows whatever else, we will be happy. Let us consider the example of a laddu. I like sweets, so I eat a laddu. The first laddu will give me great joy. The second laddu, okay, it's nice, good, I would have some more. The third, the joy goes down. The fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and a time comes when the same laddu, we say, oh no, please don't. What happened? The same laddu which was giving you joy 15 minutes ago, suddenly you don't even want to see it. What has happened? The laddu has not changed, but something has. The perception inside has changed, which brings us to the point that happiness is not outside. Happiness, sukh, anandam, is a state of mind. And we look for it outside. We feel, we project it outside. We feel that if I get something, I will be happy. But that pleasure, that joy, that anandam is fleeting, because as long as we have that, we feel we will be happy. But once we have that, we realize that no, I want something else. So we keep on trying to search, and it appears that happiness is like that mirage in a desert. Appears so tantalizingly true, but unfortunately, as we come close to it, poof, it goes off. And this troubled our ancestors. They kept on searching for happiness. And some of them had few experiences. And based on that experience, they felt that, oh, perhaps happiness is not outside. It is I who feel happy. It is I who feel sad. And the question started, I feel happy, but who is this I? And the journey of self-discovery began. Initially, we thought, I am this body. So I keep my body well and I will be happy. But then I realized that's not sufficient. We had to increase the definition of I. I became also my mind, my intellect, my senses, all of them. But that was not sufficient. Some people were able to go beyond the purview of the mind. If you are in first one dimension, then you are in 2 dimensions, and then you go into the 3rd dimension. And then if you go into the 4th dimension, then you see something different. The same way, these people went into a higher dimension and they realized that there is a principle, an entity, which is within and extremely subtle. And that entity is the core of our being. That is what we really are. And what was that? They termed it as the ocean of bliss and the fountain of knowledge. Sat Chit Ananda. That is what they discovered to be that essence of our true nature. The entire theory of Vedanta speaks about this. Aham Brahmasmi. I am that Tattvamasi, Prajnanam Brahma, and so on and so forth. And the experiences of many people afterwards corroborated with the presence of something beyond what is visible, what is manifest. There is something unmanifest, Kutastha. That was the unseen center of our existence. Well, very good, very nice. Somebody says so, I believe you. But when hunger pangs pain me, then I cannot believe that I am that supreme bliss. That time my stomach tells me I am this body also. So for us, that might be a concept, but this is our reality. How can we make this journey from this reality to that reality? How can we change our perceptions? That became the question. When we speak of perceptions, it is very essential for us to know the whole life is a game of perceptions. In the dark, I see a piece of rope and I get totally scared. That is a snake coming. Everything changes. I get a heart attack. I die of a heart attack. But when the light is turned on, oh, it was just a rope. There is no truth in it. There was no truth that it's a snake. But for me, it was the truth. Because my perception was that it is the snake coming to kill me. And a change took place in me. Let us say that I did not really die of a heart attack, but I got scared to death. And then when the light came on, I was able to see. Oh, it's just a rope. My fears go down, I normalize. That is the discovery within ourselves of that experience. At the moment, we don't have that experience. How can we have that experience? Shall I keep on saying, I am the self, I am the self, I am the self, I am the self? Will it make a difference? No, it is not going to make it. When I was in darkness and I'm thinking that the rope is a snake, if I just keep on parroting that, no, it's not the snake, but it's a rope, but it's a rope, but it's a rope. No, my perception is not going to change. We need something which is very practical. Some means by which we can alter our perceptions without creating too many ripples. Is there a way? That way is the system of yoga. Yoga is an ancient science. It is the way, the path, the means by which we can experience the sublime truths spoken of in Vedanta. And what does Vedanta speak of? Vedanta says that there is something known as Atma, which is the source of every speck of the universe. They call it Brahman. But how can I experience it? That is shown to us by yoga. And how do we get attracted to yoga? What is our requirement? Our requirement is not that experience of that highest self. Once a lady asked Bhagwan Buddha, Bhagwan, you have explained that everything is just Maya, but why don't you give moksha to people, liberate them? Why are you so hard? Why don't you have compassion? Bhagwan smiled and he said, okay, you go to the village and tell that I am very pleased today and I will give you what you desire. She went round the entire village, every house she went. What did they say? Oh, I want a child, I want a this, I want a that, I want a that, I want. And not a single person asked for moksha. So Bhagwan asked that lady, how many asked? She said none. Because we don't want moksha. So does it mean that yoga has no role in our life? No. Yoga has a very important role. Why? Because it helps us make a shift in our lives. What do you mean by that? Due to our inappropriate or improper perceptions, we undergo a lot of turmoil in life. We are unable to take the proper decision. Something which happened to a very great warrior, Arjuna. Arjun had spent his entire life preparing to battle the Kauravas. But when he came face to face with the Kauravas in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he developed cold feet. And if you look at the state he was in a nervous breakdown. He could not understand what to do, what not to do. A similar situation which was described much later by the legendary Shakespeare in Hamlet. To do or not to do is the question. Hamlet did not know, should he kill or should he not? Both sides, there was a dilemma. There was a conflict. What to do? What is appropriate? What is inappropriate? Unfortunately, Hamlet had no guru to explain, to direct, to uplift. But Arjun did. And he did ask Lord Krishna what to do. That is where, for us, yoga begins. Yoga begins with Arjuna Vishada Yogaha. It doesn't begin with meditation. It doesn't begin with higher realities. It begins with Vishad, with problems, with difficulties, with conflicts. And how can I rise above those conflicts? That is yoga. Yoga is not just practices. Hatha yoga, Raja yoga, Kundalini yoga, this yoga, that yoga. No. They are just chapters in the encyclopedia called yoga. They are all very, very useful. I'm not belittling them, but they are means to an end. In fact, yoga itself is a means to an end. What is that end? And what is that end which we can relate to? We cannot relate to attaining salvation because that is not our desire. But what do we desire? We desire happiness. How can we have happiness? That is what yoga can teach us. Lord Krishna started with explaining yogaha karma sukaushalam. Perfection in action is yoga. That is karma yoga. And he went ahead and ahead, started giving Arjun the knowledge and the various aspects. He came to Atma Sanyam Yoga. He came to Karma Sannyasa, then Atma Sanyam Yoga, then the Vibhuti Yoga. He kept on explaining, but Arjun was in still a state of quandary. Then the Lord gave him the experience which is beyond the mind. You read the Vishwarupa Darshan, and in that, it's an experience beyond the mind, which could be had only because a higher perception, Divyam Dadamite Shakshuhu, divine eyes, not this charma chakshu, but a divine perception, which is hitherto closed. That was opened for Arjun. And when that happened, then a shift took place. And then Arjun asked, so now how do I maintain this and keep this? The Lord told him, what? He told him Bhakti Yoga. And he gave him various ways how he can attain that experience. And Arjun kept on saying, but Krishna, this seems to be difficult for me. I don't think I will be able to do that. So, what to do? Then Krishna says, look, you can't do this. Try next. Try third. Try fourth. Try fifth. And if then finally you can't do anything, sarva karma phalatyagaha tatakuru yatatmavan. Leave everything. Don't get into any of these philosophies. Just do one thing. Sarva karma phalatyagaha. Sarva karma tyagaha? No. Sarva karma phalatyagaha. The attachment to the desire of the fruit of the action we have done. I help you and I desire that you should acknowledge me back. But you don't acknowledge me. Instead, you say, what did you do? And I am hurt. Krishna says, don't stop helping them. That is your dharma. But stop desiring or remaining attached. You can even desire, usko karna chahiye, this is what is appropriate. But if he doesn't, fair enough. I am not attached to what he says, and not an intellectual attachment. This has to be an experience. And when you are able to do that, then you are making a shift. The dilemmas which are surrounding you slowly start moving away. And then he said, Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasat, jnanat dhyanam vishishyate, dhyanat karma phalatyagaha. And when you do that, tyagat shantihi anantaram, peace forever. That peace is not the peace when you take a whiff of a drug and you go into an opium-induced stupor. It's not stupor. Eyes are open. Awareness is fully. You are in the battlefield. And then what happens? When you reach that, santushta satatam yogi. You become santushta, contented, always, no matter what happens. That is what is yoga for us. Much later, Maharishi Patanjali compiled these teachings and oriented them to the people of that time. Today we call it as the Raja Yoga Sutras. He said, Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodhaha, and then went on. Chitta Vritti, because that time the mind was very active. Many years later, Rishi Swatmaram spoke of two principles, Ham and Ksham, or Hum and Tham. There are two energy principles, and a balance between these two principles is yoga. We call it Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga does not mean Hat Karna or forcing. Hatha Yoga means the balance between Hum and Tham, Hum and Ksham, Ida and Pingla. Sympathetic, parasympathetic. That is yoga. Much later, that also became difficult for us. Swami Shivananda, he then said, yoga is nothing but a harmony, a state of synchronicity in the head, the heart, the hand, the intellect, the emotions, and the actions. You do that and you come to a state of harmony. And when you are in a state of harmony, there is resonance and you connect within. This is not mumbo jumbo. These are principles of science. We have Many people amongst us who are extremely learned, they will have experienced this, they would have known this. This is what Swami Shivanandaji told. Did he tell him something new? No. They told each and every one down the line told the same thing, but they presented it in a manner which the person of those times can actually implement. What Arjuna could implement, we can't. What 2000 years ago people could implement. Atha yoganushasanam means atha, now having reached this level, we speak of the discipline of yoga. We don't even have that level. He's speaking of PhD level. We are in kindergarten. Our minds are all over the place. So what do? Try and bring harmony between the head, heart, and hand. And how do we do that? There are two ways. First way is the practices. Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, Kriya Yoga. They are very essential. Each and every one works on a different aspect of our personality. In the same manner as when we speak of nutrition, we just don't take proteins and proteins and proteins. We take proteins, we take carbohydrates, we take fats, we take vitamins, minerals, micronutrients. If we don't have that wholesome diet, we will have deficiencies. In the same way, Hatha Yoga works at one aspect, Raja Yoga at another, Kriya Yoga, Kundalini Yoga at a third. These are the practices which we will need to implement in our lives. And I believe that many of you, or if not all of you, are already doing it. But is that sufficient? No. We still have those conflicts. We still have those doubts. We still have those problems. So what do? We have to include the next aspect, the sadhana aspect, by which we don't practice yoga only on the mat, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, but it becomes a part of our life. Krishna did not tell Arjuna, sit down in Padmasana, close your eyes, hands on your knees in Jnana or Chin Mudra. No, he told him something totally different. He told him a way of outlook, a perception, an approach. That is what we need to bring in. That is what is living yoga. And when we start working with that, then there are different aspects which come in. Regularity, sincerity. Swami Shivanandaji mentioned this very nicely in his 18 ETs. At some other point, maybe we can discuss more about it. But how can we have serenity, we have regularity, we have absence of vanity, we have sincerity, we have simplicity, and so on and so forth. These are simple qualities we have to bring in our lives. Regularity. First tip of practical thing, if you can manage to have 2 fixed points, I will wake up at a specific time, I will sleep at a specific time. You have started bringing some discipline in your life. Next, I will eat at specific times. I will practice. I will do my practices at a specific time. And not for a day or two, for a long period without a break. Because why do they ask that? Is it to torture us? No, it's not to torture us. Although while we are in the grind, it does feel it is to torture us. But it is for a very, very simple reason that our perception has been created that is a snake, it is not a rope. I need to change that perception. I need to make that change within. How can I do that? To bring about that change within, we need to work on these aspects. So, regularity, maintaining sincerity, doing your practices properly, That is one aspect. Is that sufficient? That is not enough. We need to go next step. We need to implement the different codes of conduct, the yamas and niyamas. Why? So that the disharmony which we have, the lack of synchronicity which we have, slowly starts going down. Yam and niyam are not meant for moral policing. It is considered they are moralities, they are ethics. No, they are not. They are means by which we can maintain harmony within ourselves. We do say, if I cannot be true to myself, what is the use of all? Yes. So how do you be true to yourself? That is what we learn through yama and niyama. That is the next step. Choose one yama and one niyama. Swami Shivanandaji simplified it further. He said, pick up a virtue and a corresponding vice. Slowly eradicate a vice by imbibing, bringing in a virtue. If you have a glass full of air and you want to remove the air, the more you try to pull air out, a different sort of air comes in and sits. But if you don't make that effort, just pour water in, automatically air goes out. Because there is a space within us which has been occupied by a vice. The more you try to pull it out, de-addict yourself, harder it comes back. Don't make that mistake. Start bringing in a corresponding virtue. You are not troubling yourself. You bring in a virtue, you will see the vice automatically goes away. So that is the next step. Work on your thoughts. Observe what you are doing. We do sit down and say, observe your mind. But is it meant only for that 15 minutes when we are doing yoga? No. We have to observe ourselves. In meditation, we observe the effects of external stimuli on us. Why can't we do that all the time? It's very difficult. Let us not go overboard. Say 5 minutes. Maintain a spiritual diary, a very simple way. I'm not saying a normal diary, I'm saying a spiritual diary. And in the spiritual diary, what should you bring? Bring all these points. You are observing yourself. Did I wake up on time? Did I sleep on time? Did I have my meals on time? Did I practice the virtue I decided? Was I aware of the vice I decided? Then, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my ambitions? What are my needs? The Swan principle, Ahimsa, is a one who can have discrimination between the milk and water, and it picks up the milk, leaves water. How can we become a Ahimsa? Use this principle: strength, weakness, ambition, need. Work on them. We will be able to move forward. So that is the next thing we can bring in our lives. All of this is also quite difficult. So Swami Shivanandaji said, doesn't matter. We can have yet another path, a simpler path. And he gave the eightfold path of yoga for the modern man. And that path did not start with meditation. How did it start? It started with serve, love, give, purify, meditate, realize. And after realizing, come back and be good, do good, be kind and be compassionate. Reach out to others. This is the simplest path how you can manage your mind, because yoga is all about mind management. The paths we have spoken of earlier are hard, especially for today's times. But this path is very easy. And that is what is something which we can implement in our lives. Serve, love, give, not as an act of charity. A mother does not serve the child because she feels pity for the child. There is unconditional love. When you give, you are breaking your attachments. Serve, love, give becomes the basis of spiritual progress in your life without having to resort to harder methods. Yes, bring in the yogic practices, but they are not sufficient. To be able to reach karma phala tyaga, we need to work at a level. Through yoga, it is possible, but it is hard. Through bhakti, it is possible. It is much easier. And what is bhakti? Bhakti, Pithadhishwari Swami Satyasanganand, Pithadhishwari of Rikhiya Peeth, she says many times, bhakti is not crying in front of God and appealing to our chief supply officer, oh God, I want this, that, the other. But bhakti is a brain wave wherein a different awareness comes in. Gurudev Swami Satyanandji, he used to say, bhakti is ishq hakiki. When you fall in love with that which is hakikat, the only eternal principle. And when it is with the world, it is ishq mazazi. So how do we do that? Steps are serve, love, give. That brings a change within our personality without making an effort. Because bhakti is defined as bhaja sevayam, not bhaja pujayam. It is bhaja sevayam. You have service. I see there are a couple of questions. I will come to them in a few minutes. You have service as a means of self-purification. You have selfless love as a means of self-purification. And what does purification mean? Changing the perceptions in here. That is what is essential for us. If we are serious about progress, about spiritual progress, if we are serious about improving the quality of our life, if we are serious to go deeper into states of yoga, then in today's times, this is the easiest path for us. That is what is very essential, and we need to start and do it small steps, baby steps, not big steps, baby steps. And when we take those small steps in our life, a change starts taking place. And this change brings about the same change which would come if we practiced yoga for Satu Dirgha Kalena, Nairantaryena. Why? Because the basis of all the activities, of all the change is finally the Kundalini pathway, the chakras and the nadis. There is a shift which starts taking place over there. And when that starts happening, perceptions change, understanding changes. And then in the 18th chapter, Arjuna says, Karishye vachanam tava, I will do as you say. Because, not because he said it under duress, he said it because he understood, he had a shift in his perception. The moha maya, the infatuation, the delusion he had in the beginning to fight or not to fight, that delusion got clear. How? Through a shift in this pathways. That is yoga. And in today's times, serve, love, give becomes an essential and necessary condition if we want to go deeper in our life, if we want to harmonize our manasa, vacha, karmana, head, heart, and hand, then shift comes in. The spiritual progress comes in. Yoga starts blossoming in our lives. A higher understanding develops. So this is in short, in brief. The topic is vast. I have tried to give you a few hints, a few openings. And now we have to go further. So we are coming to a close of our time. And I think there are questions. Sabnishji, do we take questions? How do we proceed from here?
Yeah, sure. I will have the option to unmute themselves, and we can take some questions. I think first we can go through the questions that are on the chat, and then if someone has individual questions, they can ask.
Okay. So, human beings came on this planet 5 lakh years ago. When did modern man invent yoga, felt a need for that, realized it's important for happiness, and started practicing yoga? And do you think yoga will remain with the human race until the end of human race? How will constant progress in modern technology affect the yogic path? Very nice questions. Yes, we can say modern man, you see, when you have Govindji, you have brought out a very important aspect. Mammals and animals. We have some chimpanzees, some bonobos, some types of monkeys whose DNA is 99.5% identical with humans. There's only a 0.5 difference between humans and animals, specific animals, of course. But the whole thing is totally different. They are at a different ball game. We are in a different ball game. How did that happen? You have hinted at that point. Many years ago, when man was like these chimpanzees, some shift took place in that. It was the moment when man discovered fire. And fire is a transforming principle. It triggered the consciousness within and something shifted. Like in a video game, we come to end of one level and we jump into a different level. That was the moment when man discovered fire. There was a jump which took place in the human consciousness. And the human consciousness took a quantum leap, not an incremental leap, a quantum leap. And we were catapulted into a higher consciousness. That is the moment of the shift which you are speaking about. And that is also the moment when the principle of yajna was discovered. Time is short, so I cannot speak much about yajna, but yajna is a very strong complement to yoga because both work on the consciousness principle within a human being and they help in increasing, expanding that consciousness. So yoga was discovered along with yajna. Let us say at that point of time when man discovered that there is consciousness and shift took place. And yoga was not invented, yoga was discovered because yoga existed. That path by which you could ascend in your consciousness already existed. We just did not know about it and we discovered it. And then we started practicing it. The yoga which was needed in earlier times was different because the requirements were different. Today, the requirements are different. And therefore, as long as we progress in life, be it material progress or spiritual progress, as long as we work with our mind, we will have the yogic principles with us, because they are the basis by which we can do mind management. So that I feel is something very essential. And I believe that yoga will stay with us, will be our companion in our journey of exploration till the very end. And that end, if we follow the principles of yoga, won't be an end, but like life comes to a full circle. But if it is not a circle, it can come to a full spiral, and then a higher spiral, and a higher spiral, and a higher spiral. So there should not be an end. If we practice yogic principles, there should not be an end, just a new beginning. And I think that is what we need to look at: newer beginnings, deepening our awareness, understanding, and strengthening our resolve and practices.
Ramesh Deshpande, you want to ask your question? Or you can unmute yourself.
I don't have a question because Swamiji has explained it so well. All these concepts are very detailed, explained in Patanjali Yoga Shastra. So there is enough evidence on that. But the two questions, Govind Modi talked about when this happened. Based on human history, or at least our history of Indian philosophy, it has happened at least 10,000 plus years more. Because I think beginning is Vedas, then came Upanishads, you see, and then came further thinking about how to achieve the concept of Brahma. And so one is the development of concept of Veda, and then how to achieve it, how to reach there, the Ishvara Pranidhana. That's what Patanjali tried to explain, Ishvara Pranidhana. So I think it is very well known. Now, beyond, there are so many upheavals have happened, before 10,000 years. So many civilizations have come and gone, and so many geographical, geopolitical changes have happened. But this philosophy has a history, and so we should say at least this has evolved, this concept has evolved at least 10,000 plus more years I think I should say that. So that's all I want to comment on. And I think Swamiji, Ishvara Pranidhana is the ultimate goal of Patanjali Yoga Shastra. So Ishvara, I will appreciate if you can comment a little bit about Ishvara Pranidhana, whether that is the goal of yoga, ultimately. That's what Patanjali ultimately talks about. Thank you.
Here, I would like to mention one thing. You spoke about Vedas and Upanishads. But before Vedas and Upanishads, something did exist. Vedas and Upanishads are the Agamas. And before Agamas, there was Nigamas, there was Tantra, there were techniques. And they existed much before the Vedic lore.
Of course, because Vedas won't come in one day. There will be.
I agree. I'm just trying to bring a slightly different angle to this.
Yeah.
And if you look at what yoga is a blend between Tantra, Sankhya, and Vedic philosophy. Tantra, what does Tantra mean? Rasayan Tantra, Vahan Tantra. It means a distilled, accurate technique. If you are going to extract gold from gold ore, you need a specific technique. So then that became the Tantra. And what is generally known as Tantra is that system by which the consciousness can be distilled, expanded, and brought out. So these techniques existed long ago. Then slowly they were blended in to make them more practical and useful for man. And as you said very well, that there were upheavals, and those upheavals became times when the presentation of yoga changed. Earlier it was different, then came Patanjali, then came others, so it keeps on changing. And what is Ishwar Pranidhan? What is Ishwar? According to Ishavasya Upanishad, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. That means Isha. Isha is the one who regulates, the one who controls, based on which everything works. For our understanding, we give it a form, but it is something which is an abstract concept. And that abstract concept is beyond the mind. So if for us, Ishwar can be a form, for us, Ishwar can be a principle, but that principle regulates all the activities. The sun will not rise 1 minute late or 1 minute early. It rises on time. So we can say that it is based on gravitational and other laws of physics, or we can say that there is some God who is taking care of it. Matter is, the tattva is the same. Expression for our understanding is modified. So acknowledging the presence of this supra-mental. Mental is not intellectual, but mind. You have the body, the mind, man. And above man, there is a principle. That is Ishwar. And efforts to connect with that, to align with that, that is a principle of Ishwar Pranidhan. And then, the details are much more. I'm just trying to bring the concept in. And that is where the bhakti movement can also be looked into. Because you see, people underestimate the power of emotions. You can say whatever you want to say about emotions, but without emotions, we cannot take even a single decision. There was an experiment in which the emotional center of the brain was disconnected, and the person could not choose if he should do one or the other. And he would give n number of reasons to do option 1 and option 2 and option 1 and option 2. In the end, it is an emotional decision which is done. And bhakti is refining these emotions. Raw emotions are of no use. Refined emotions. And now when we have to refine our emotions, we give it a direction, we give it a form, or for some people, we don't need a form. So, there are different aspects. Patanjali, when he was speaking at a time when the philosophy, the state of mind and think of people was different. Today, it is different. So we also need to factor that in. Ishwar Pranidhan is one of the most crucial aspects of yoga. But in today's times, it is a little bit misunderstood also. So that is where Ishwar Pranidhan stays. There was a question by, I believe, one more person, Hana, I believe. Is it also true that when we do service to others, we forget our own problems? Yes. Yes, my dear. That is very true. That is very true. And Sabnis ji, we are already crossing 7:09. Do we have more time?
It's up to you. If it's up to you, I don't have any problem. If there are a few more questions, and
okay,
again, it's up to you if you want to.
Swamiji and Srikant, if you have 1 minute for me, yeah. No, you explained very well, sir. Swamiji Ishwara Pranidhan. One way of looking at it is consciousness, pure consciousness is Ishwara.
Yeah.
And to go towards that pure consciousness, from your own consciousness to universal consciousness, that is consciousness in its totality, universal totality.
Yes.
I think that is a fact. And Patanjali refers to two things, saprajnat and asaprajnat. That is, so long as you think that you are distinct from this universal consciousness, you are still two. There is no unity.
The duality
But
exists.
then if you go asaprajnat, and then the duality ends, and that is what. The whole yoga is trying you to take there. You can go from your multi-dimensional personality to duality, but once you go to duality, you can go to monoism, that single Advaita. Yeah. And yoga, I think, tries to take you there. Please correct me.
Perfectly right. You are perfectly right. That is what yoga does. But tell me, the point is, how many of us can even move? I mean, keep our mind still on the nose tip or any place for more than a moment? Our minds are so fickle that samadhi is way of dhyan to nahi lagta hai, pratyahar nahi hota hai. So the question which I am trying to bring is that these philosophies are very true. There is no doubt about it. But it is like we are in kindergarten and we are speaking about something in not even matriculate, in MSc, PhD, doctorate. Theoretically, it is so much.
Earlier you said very rightly, yama, without yama, niyama, pranayama, asana and pranayama, you cannot go to pratyahara. I always say in all sessions, I say, don't think of meditation unless you go through this process. You have to do this process to be able to do meditation in its true sense. Am I right in that? Yeah.
Perfectly. I mean, can you jump class 4 and suddenly go to class 6?
Exactly.
You can't. You have to, but then it is not easy. For people, it is difficult. बोलने के लिए आसान है, करने के लिए मुश्किल हो जाता है. How can we actually make that thing happen? That is the point. And that is why the different ways and means by which we can, when we have a problem, we try one solution, other solution, third solution. The end result is the same, so that we can master our mind step by step. So that is there. I would like to come back to that point of, is it also true that when we do service to others, we forget our own problems? In today's times, this has been seen to be a very, very powerful tool. Service unto others, selfless service unto others, because they have found that when you do selfless service, shifts take place within you in the same manner as it would have if you perform these practices. That change, what Ramesh ji was speaking about, yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, all that starts happening. How you have reached out, because what is mind, what is yoga all about? Yoga is about union of the individual with the cosmic. But the cosmic is not just up above there. That person who is in front of you, who is a beggar, who is a patient, who could be anybody who is not in your circle of I, me, myself, my wife, my son, my husband, my this, that, the other. And when we reach out, we can say we are doing a social work, but actually we are trying to connect to that person. Vedanta says that you and I are one. The consciousness is same in all, but we can't feel that pain. किसी और को दर्द होता है तो मुझे दर्द नहीं होता है. मेरे बेटे को, in fact, I would like to tell you a small anecdote which took place in my life. स्वामी जी, गुरुदेव स्वामी सत्यानंद जी एक बार सत्संग दे रहे थे. I was in Rikhiya at that time. I used to run the clinic. सत्संग चल रहा था and स्वामी जी वेदांत पर विषय चल रहा था. स्वामी जी said कि हाँ, we speak of यूनिवर्सल कॉन्शियसनेस, यू एंड आई आर वन। अरे लेकिन वो कुछ होता नहीं है। मेरा बेटा, सपोज आई हैव गॉट अ 6 months 1 year old चाइल्ड, मेरा बेटा रात में अगर बीमार पड़ता है तो मैं उसके बगल में बैठ करके उसको पंखा करता हूं, दवाई करता हूं, माई होल नाइट इज फायर्ड एंड आई एम जस्ट सिटिंग नेक्स्ट टू माई चाइल्ड, आई डोंट इवन फील इट। I'm sure so many parents will have experienced this. My child is crying and I'm just concentrating, how can I make this child comfortable? And Swamiji said, और जब यही चीज अपने पड़ोसी के घर में होती है, what is your reaction? First thing is, अरे यार रात भर वो रो रहा था, पूरी रात फायर हो गई। सिचुएशन सेम है, कोई बदला है? बच्चा बीमार है, तड़प रहा है, रो रहा है। लेकिन वो जब मेरा बच्चा था तो मैं पूरा ख्याल कर रहा हूं, दौड़ रहा हूं, भाग रहा हूं, सब चीज कर रहा हूं, और बगल वाला है मैं गाली देता हूं। क्यों? बिकॉज आई हैव डिस्कनेक्टेड। इंस्टेड ऑफ सेइंग दैट डिस्कनेक्टेड, देयर इज एन आत्मा इन दैट person. If I am trying to connect with that, if I try to feel that pain of that person and try to remove the pain of yourself, of that person, yourself, without expecting anything in return, then तुम्हारा सब चीज धुल जाता है। ये सब जो योग की हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं ना, सब हो जाता है। हा ये ऊधो हमें बता दो, योग से क्या योग कम है। Gopis from Vrindavan, they asked when once Uddhav, Krishna had sent Uddhav to take a yoga seminar in Vrindavan. और वो उसका योगा सेमिनार का तो सब ताला लग गया, वो भक्ति सीख करके आ गया। योग से क्या वियोग कम है। यू कनेक्ट टू दैट आत्मा ओवर देयर। अरे वो जो तड़प रहा है वो भी तो एक आत्मा है। तुम ऊपर वाले आत्मा के साथ क्यों कनेक्ट कर रहे हो? सामने वाले के साथ कनेक्ट करो। जैसे हम इसका प्रयास करते हैं, योग से जो चेंजेस हमारे शरीर में, मन में, चेतना में आते हैं, बिना प्रयास किए वो सब हमारे अंदर आना शुरू होता है। दैट इज द सीक्रेट ऑफ सर्विस। सर्विस इज नॉट सोशल सर्विस, सर्विस इज स्पिरिचुअल सेवा। एंड दैट इज व्हाई यू विल सी in the life of every saint, be it Saint Francis of Assisi, be it Mother Teresa, be it Kabir Das, be it any saint, you have Tukaram, you have Ramdas, you have all of them. Everybody has done seva. Why? Because seva is the simplest, most effective and powerful practice of purification of all these impurities which are there, which cloud our capabilities and potentials. So that is the basis of. Yes,
Swamiji, if we have time, I don't know, people probably got, like we took too much time today, but so, if you have time and if Sri doesn't mind.
Just I want to just check if anyone else has questions.
Okay, sure. Sure.
And then you can come back to Swami.
Sure.
Come back to you. Okay. So I'm not sure, Anjali, Krishna, anyone else has any questions? Please, this is the time. Otherwise, Govind, go ahead and you can ask your question. Go ahead, Govind.
Oh, okay. Swami, just speculative things, a couple of comments, and I really want your views on that because of your knowledge, your background and all that. And that would be something like an eye-opener for somebody, some of us who are just a common man. Okay. One thing you said, yogas was discovered. For the human being, it was there, but discovered, and they felt the need for that. That's why it was discovered. We are talking of Kali Yuga. But after millions of years or billions of years, there is going to be Satya Yoga. And the 10th avatar, Dashavatar, the 10th avatar, when it comes, I feel sometimes that all these things, what we are doing today to find happiness, peace, remain physically healthy, emotionally healthy, is all because of these manifestations of so many other things of the Kali Yuga. And that has been said by Bhagwan also, whosoever, did these yogas and all that. So, and then again, you said guru, when you said about Arjuna or anybody, you said guru is very important in life. Okay. Now, so I come to two conclusions. I want your views on two things. I think because of this modern technology, maybe in 1 million or 2 million years, there may not be any guru, because the technology will be so advanced that everybody will learn everything from internet or whatever it is, or knowledge at home. Okay, something. Second thing, when that happens, when there is no guru, what is going to happen? That concept of Guruji, that we definitely need to go to the human being if this happens in Kali Yuga. And then my next thing is, when Satya Yuga starts, do we need all these things? Because everything will be so good and people will be happy, human beings will be happy, and everything will be. So do we need then, that time there will not be perhaps people will not probably believe in God, people will not believe into unhappiness, or they will have mental peace, they will have happiness, everything. So please, this is very important, okay, for a common
Very
man.
Nice question. It is a very nice question. I really enjoyed hearing this question. Because you see, it brings us down to the philosophical basis of creation and also of yoga. And you also spoke of guru. See, I think because I have another appointment. So after this, I think we'll have to take, stop here. But these points, I will very briefly touch upon this, because the points you have raised, to actually, to do full justice to it, I'll need much more time than I have just now. So maybe at a later date, we can go more into details of it. Briefly, point number one, you spoke about guru. Guru is not a person who is what we call in today's times as a life coach, who tells you, oh, this or that. No, he's not that. Guru is a person who has experienced higher states of consciousness, the highest state of consciousness. And out of compassion, because we are on a lower level of evolution on this scale of consciousness, not just physical evolution, but scale of consciousness, that we need somebody to show us the path. That is what the guru is. And guru is not a person. Guru is a principle. Guru is a tattva that manifests through different persons. For Moses, it was a fire. How did, in the Adikal, you see, when we speak about the Shrutis, we speak so much about the Vedas. But what are Vedas? They are known as Shrutis. Shrutis means direct experience. They heard this word. They heard this word. And they didn't hear this word like what we are talking. But when they went deeper within, they experienced something. And that was a vibration. That was sound that came down. Like we today have got cloud computing. In the same way, there is something known as Akasha, much, much, much subtler. So that higher level of consciousness, when you connect into that, there is a descent of knowledge. And that knowledge, and when we have difficulties in this, then we have the need of a guru. Guru is not our psychoanalyzer. Guru is not our hand holder. Guru is not, a person on who comes and says, okay, beta, tumhare sab problems dur ho gaye. No. Guru is one who helps us expand our consciousness. Like somebody has very rightly said, dispeller of darkness. In that sense, even a light bulb is a dispeller of darkness. We are not speaking of the physical darkness, the darkness in consciousness that opens up and a new vista opens. So that is about Guru. And about Kali Yuga and then Satya Yuga. Mind you, sir, if you look at the principle of evolution as per Sankhya. You have Purusha and Prakriti. Now, Vedanta speaks slightly differently, but the general pathway is more or less the same. You have Prakriti and you have Purusha. Prakriti is Trigunatmika, 33.33% Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. She is in a state of balance. That is the state of dissolution. क्षीर सागर में जब सब समाप्त हो जाता है, and then Purusha triggers, the balance is lost, and from there the evolutes come out, and then all of us would know how it comes. When it comes down into the manifest form, we always have Sattva very little, more Rajas, and much more Tamas. Now, is it 70% Tamas, 80% Tamas, 90% Tamas, 50% Tamas? That is the only difference. In Satya Yuga, there is greater awareness that yes, Tamas is there, but ability to overcome is wider. There is something like what we call as herd immunity. I have not taken the vaccine, but 80 persons around me have taken the vaccines out of 100. I automatically develop immunity. In Satya Yuga, because the consciousness, global consciousness, cosmic, collective consciousness, not cosmic, is slightly higher, our responses are different. And then the consciousness descends or, goes down. In Kali Yuga, the consciousness is going to go down and there is going to be. But it is said that for a spiritual aspirant, there is no time like Kali Yuga. Because what we could achieve by doing sadhana for tens of thousands of years in Satya Yuga, you can do it like this in Kali Yuga. And in Kali Yuga, the only sadhana which is prescribed is Nama Sankirtan, repetition of the name of the Lord. Okay, you take the emotional concept outside, vibration. Just you are focusing your mind on a specific vibration, and that is creating a change within. Something which would have taken 100 years outside in Satya Yuga, it will take half a year here. That is the potency of Kali Yuga. So it depends on which aspect you look at. If you're looking at just the social aspect, yes, there's going to be degeneration. But if you're looking at a spiritual aspect, no time like Kali Yuga. Otherwise, in Satya Yuga, you would have to spend hundreds of years. Here, chutki mein ho jata hai. So it's just a matter of how you look at it. And I believe that Kali Yuga is one of the best times for spiritual aspirants, because even a little bit of effort pays great dividends. And in Kali Yuga especially, if we perform service with this spiritual awareness, Adhyatmik Seva, Nishkam Seva, you do everything else, don't stop, but you start bringing that in. You see, there is going to be a quantum leap in the depth of your practices. So with this, Sabnis-ji, I have another
okay, sure. Thank you very much, Swamiji. And it was very nice and nice questions and answers session also. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again.
So shall we conclude with Om chanting?
Sure.
Yes. Please sit in a comfortable posture, hands on your knees in Dhyan or Chin Mudra. The head, neck, shoulders, back, all in a straight line. Eyes and mouth gently closed. Become aware of the whole body, from the top of your head to the toes. Include the awareness of your breath to the awareness of the body. Now shift your awareness to the eyebrow center. And at the eyebrow center, visualize the form of your Guru, your Ishta Devata, or a candle flame, or experience a spandan. And try to maintain the awareness over there for a few moments. Maintaining this awareness, we shall chant the mantra Om 3 times altogether, taking in a deep breath. Shanti mantras. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Bringing your palms together, rub them against each other. Place them on the closed eyes. Experience the warmth radiating from the palms to the eyes. And then, when comfortable, move the palms away. Open your eyes. Namo Narayan. Hari Om.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
So I will take your leave, Sabnis ji. अभी हमको थोड़ा सा निकलना है.
ठीक है. Thank you.